Now, most of what I do is to provide context for you in the war in Ukraine so that you can understand what's going on. Here, I want to show you something about propaganda. Now, Margarita Simonyan in the first clip is going to be talking about how we're fighting against the entirety of the West, all of NATO. They're arrayed against us, and yet we're prevailing, and we've made this part of Ukraine. We've returned it. Returned it means they've stolen it to make it part of Russia. Okay. And then in a second video, they're talking about it sounds almost the opposite. And you'll see what it is. It's really interesting to watch the propaganda talking about how in the second one, they're just going to be saying some things like, hey, the whole world, we have all these friends throughout the world. And again, remember, this is state-controlled Russian media. Okay, here first, Margarita Simonyan, Russian political commentator, when we ask ourselves in our kitchen chats, oh, why haven't we taken Kyiv? Why are we not in Lviv? That's Lvov is the Russian Lviv. I'd like us to remember one thing. We are not fighting Ukraine, but the entire civilized world. I thought it was interesting that she said civilized. Okay, so that means you're what, the barbarians? Is that it? Also, let's celebrate what we have already returned. Return means to steal and make part of Russia. And they're saying they're returning it to what properly belongs to Russia. Take the Sea of Azov. Peter the Great nearly died trying to gain access to it. Now, once things have settled down, you'll be able to take a short speedboat ride from Krasnodar coast to Mariupol. It's lovely down there. Okay, so let's look at what she has to say here. Here we go. And we will still see such miracles with Ukraine. We will, first of all, see miracles even now. I want to remind us that ourselves every night when we sit in our kitchens and say, oh, what's going on? Why haven't we taken Kyiv yet? Well, you know, that is actually a really good question for her to be saying, why haven't we taken Kyiv yet? When like, you know, it was supposed to be 3 days. And then I just saw something which was 14 years ago where Putin was saying we could take Kyiv in 2 weeks. Okay, regardless of what it is. Now, Darth Putin, the humorist, commented on that. Well, I didn't say which 2 weeks, right? But why haven't they? Well, listen to what she has to say in response to that. Why haven't we taken Lvov yet? I want to remind ourselves every day that we are not fighting with any Ukraine, that we have defeated Ukraine in the first 2 weeks. No, you didn't. You did not defeat Ukraine in the first 2 weeks. Ukraine actually defeated you in the first 2 weeks. They pushed you back and kept you from the objective that you were trying to capture, which was Kyiv in those first few weeks, against all odds, which was unbelievable to you, to them. Well, maybe not to them, but to the rest of the world. Okay, in the first 2 weeks. And as President Trump said, the war would have lasted another 3 days if it weren't for us, right? Like, if the U.S. hadn't provided those materials, it only would have lasted 3 days. And so she's quoting that, or kind of misquoting it, but that we are at war with and she goes on, with the entire so-called civilized Western world for the first time. Okay, so she's claiming, and I've seen this before, that it's Russia against everybody. No. I mean, okay, I get it. Ukraine is backed by the West. They're getting arms and money from them, but you're also getting technology from China. You're getting technology in the forms of Shahed drones from Iran. You have actual men, boots on the ground from North Korea. Well, at what point is it a good thing when you have to reach into North Korea for troops to supplement? And what is that a sign of strength? But that's where you are. So you actually have a few nations arrayed against Ukraine in a hot war where the West, NATO countries are not at war with you. If they were, this would be a very different picture, but they don't seem to be awake enough to do that. She goes on, for the first time in our history, we are alone, without allies, alone, fighting and winning. No, you're neither winning nor are you alone. Okay, I mean, that's really important for us to understand. What's actually transpiring here is that Russia is not alone. Russia has a gang of other thuggy-like nations that are with it, supporting it against Ukraine. If anything, Ukraine feels pretty alone other than the financial and armament assistance. Remind yourself of this every day when you feel like whining, if only because God forbade whining and that despondency is a great sin, or as it says in my novel, and she's going to plug her novel. Oh, thank you very much for mentioning it on the air. It's now a top seller. let me remind you, is called "In the beginning was the word, and in the end will be a number." You can fall into this number of the word. In the Russian language is letter Y, and it means despondency. It also remind yourself, friends, so that she just plugged in her own commercial for her novel. No, I'm not going to read her novel either. It is wonderful, great. I was just there in August. It's so nice. In the Sea of Azov, beauty. And so she's talking about this city that she was in. Active, I can't pronounce lots of things, but I was there. Lotuses grew there. Lotuses, real lotuses. Imagine you don't have to go to India. Everything is overgrown. Lotuses. There are estuaries in the Sea of Azov. I go there every year, and I don't know. It's just a bit more now that they sort out a little more bureaucracy. In my native Akurti, simply boat to Mariupol. Isn't that great? Because this is our internal sea. Okay, this is an important point to her. She's saying that this is her internal sea. This is Russia. This over here is Ukraine. And what Russia has done is claimed this as part of Russia, making the Sea of Azov internal, which it is not. It is actually on the other side of Russia from Ukraine. Okay, I want to remind about this. This is what Peter the Great, for example, was striving for and never achieved, and almost lost his life in a campaign in pursuit of all that is ours. Remember, all of what you see here, she says, is ours. And remember, the world is arrayed against her. It's the whole world against Russia, and Russia is still taking ground. Okay. Let's go on to this. John Bolton says the century's main threat to America, and I think he's right. Century's main threat to America and its partners is the rapidly emerging axis between China and Russia and their associated outriders like North Korea, Iran, and Belarus. That's right. And they feel like they're on the ascendancy. That's what I talked about this morning in my daily brief. I even started by saying, like, if you were just an outside observer, a space alien looking down, who would you bet on? Just in looking at the last 24 hours, who would you think are going to be the victors, and who do you think are the losing side of this equation between the West and the axis of autocracy or evil or whatever you want to call it? Okay, this is the Russian media monitor, and this gentleman who's going to be speaking, he's got some really interesting thoughts as well, and he's going to be saying some things that are kind of nutty, but he's saying that, no, we have all these friends. Okay, and by the way, Trump's terrible, and Russia will never be friends with America, and so on and so forth. Okay, so special thanks to the Russian Media Monitor for putting this out. As always, they do great work, so thanks to them. Okay, for the global West, he says, the meeting of Putin and Trump in Alaska essentially meant the following. At the moment, Russia's so-called diplomatic isolation turned out to be ineffective. Well, okay, this is one of the things that Joe Biden did well. Okay, I give credit to Biden where Biden deserves credit. Biden isolated Russia. Trump unisolated Russia, and that's unfortunate. He should never have done this. There's this idea that was thrown out with the garbage. The notion of Russia as an aggressor turned out not to be obvious even in the West. Undisputed aggressors don't get the handshakes, don't get the red carpet rolled out for them. Well, yeah, like this is a terrible picture of these soldiers putting out the red carpet for Putin, and then it's going to be propaganda value. We said that the other day, and here it is. Besides, the red carpet was rolled out for our president by American servicemen. As a whole, the mere fact of this meeting was a defeat for the West, albeit not a fatal one. Can we say that we have won? Well, we can portray this as a victory in about 50 years. We will be able to say, yes, Russia has enlarged. It has really enlarged. It added 3 to 12 million people to its population. That means Ukrainians, right? That means absorbing those oblasts and those Ukrainians. According to a different calculation, a new population. However, of course, we wanted more. Of course they wanted more. They're always going to want more. We wanted more and more territories, he says. Yeah, we wanted total influence over Kyiv. Now, if they had total influence over Kyiv, this never would have happened, because what Russia really wanted was to control Ukraine. And if it could have controlled it politically, like it's trying to do in Georgia, it would have just done that. And then there wouldn't have been a war. But as Kyiv wanted to go its own way and be part of the West and not part of the Ruski Mir, they attacked in order to take it over. For this, cunning and difficult negotiations with Trump are underway. All that Trump can do is to offer us as a great gift to allow Russia to remain on the lands. Gosh, I hope that does not happen. That we've conquered either way. Maybe he will facilitate us getting something extra. And that is what they're asking for. They're asking for, hey, we own this land de facto. We've already conquered it. That's yet to be determined in the long term unless there's a intervening peace treaty that preempts it. But okay, and maybe he'll facilitate something extra, meaning give us this extra 20% of Donbass and 25% of these other two areas that we haven't actually controlled, and then we'll make a peace deal. This would be terrible, absolutely terrible in the DPR and LPR. And yet they're to conquer, but not. This is not for us for sure. We very, very, very much want to believe in our friend Trump. Political scientists in Russia are acting as though they are hoping that Trump is personally observing them, like they're on their talk shows, and they hope that Trump is watching their appearances. Can you imagine it in American talk shows? American political science are sitting around and happily yelling, right now, we will split up the world with the Russians. No, you can't imagine this. They don't have political science like this there. There is no one shares or wants anything to share anything with us. Some will ask, so Russia has to keep on fighting as though I am the one making these decisions? In reality, we don't have much of a choice, he says. Yes, Russia's going to keep fighting. He's going to say, we don't have a choice. We have to keep on fighting, because if we stop fighting right now, nothing will change. Those bad Ukrainians will keep attacking, taking back what was lost. For some time, we will certainly have to keep fighting. He's saying it outright. It's very clear. Also, you have to realize that any ceasefire, he goes on to say, won't mean the cessation of military actions. Unfortunately, the Ukrainian question is being decided not only near Sloviansk and Kherson, it's being decided through the creation of the new real military strategic alliances, wow, with the countries of the Socialist bloc. Remember what just happened over the last couple of days. Now, he is talking 3 days ago, but just over the last 3 days, Putin was meeting with Xi and Kim and the Iranians and Lukashenko and whoever else in this Shanghai Cooperation Organization. But he's going to go on even beyond that. They have other friends. So where Margarita Simonyan was saying it's us against the world, he's going to go and list all the friends that they have with countries of the Socialist bloc, with the Red Belt and Latin America, okay, Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, and so on. We have to respond to Trump, not only during the negotiations. We have to answer Trump on the globe of this planet. Of course, we've lost a part of Ukraine. Forever? No, nothing is forever. When they say they've lost a part of Ukraine, they mean the rest of Ukraine that's not under siege by the Russians. Forever? No, nothing is forever. At some point, he says, there will be a global economic or political crisis, and when everything in Ukraine will start to fall apart, we will start to complete what we didn't finish the first time. They're going to keep coming. Like he's telling you, they're going to keep coming. It's quite likely that this time the U.S. won't even get involved, and that's just crazy. Okay, so with that, I want to show you this. And this is something else that I just saw yesterday. Dmitry Medvedev posted this. Finland defeated the USSR in the war, said Stubb. President Stubb, the president of Finland. They're talking about the Winter War. Well, these victories are clearly visible on the map of Finland's lost territory. This is apparently a hint for the drug clown in Kyiv on how to explain this upcoming victory. Well, and you see these three areas, one little one up here, and then down here, and then down here, a larger area. And that was the Winter War. And I was looking at that and I was like, I actually did the math. The Soviet Union was 200 times larger in territory and 46 times larger in population than Finland in 1939. And that was all that you could take? I'd call that a win. Like, they fought them to a draw. It was a Pyrrhic victory for, okay, so yeah, it was a victory, but it cost you mightily in the Winter War. And that may have also cost you more in World War II as a consequence of what you lost in the Winter War. At any rate, okay. So that's the way that they process these kind of silly propaganda kind of way of thinking. Tell me what you thought about this. Was this helpful to your understanding, unpacking what they were saying and then kind of refuting it? If so, tell me in the comments below. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.